A lot of people get anxious about deliveries that perhaps are more classically driven in terms of drawing and so forth, or mixed media, and perhaps are not necessarily directed to CG, and people worry about that, or deliveries that are almost pure CG because that's the way in which the industry is often perceived. So quite a lot of questions for us to kind of address about, you know, technique and approach there. Okay, Anthony? Yeah? Okay.
Thank you. So I'm Tony Prosser from Real Time UK. I will now show you a few examples of the kind of work that we do. We are fairly unique in terms of being a studio that operates in a couple of different market sectors. The first one being video games, but what we do in video games isn't actually to produce video games, or in fact we rarely even make content for the video game itself. But what we do is this specialist area of making pre-rendered marketing films and marketing trailers to promote video games ahead of their launch, which means we kind of get to do the best bit, have the most fun. We don't have to labour on a game for 2 or 3 years. Typically our projects are about 3 months in duration. But as well as doing that sort of really high-end, really highly polished CGI work in terms of pre-rendered games trailers, we also do work for the automotive industry. You see a couple of clips coming up there, and that's really where we're kind of borrowing from the skills that we've established for the video games industry. And we just saw obviously Phil Shoebottom's journey through his career so far. There was, as you probably noticed, there was a strong automotive element to what he was doing. Well, because we established a way of rendering and animating CGI cars at very high level, we were able to transfer those skills into offering quite a bespoke service to the automotive industry itself as well. And just for added variety, we occasionally do TV commercials as well. Often people ask us to get involved in TV commercials when they perhaps see something in our automotive work or video games work which is going to be really relevant for them with what they're doing for their commercials production. So just going to show you a couple of movies that will help represent the kind of work we're doing in terms of pre-rendered marketing trailers for the games industry. So that's what we'd call a teaser trailer, fairly emotive, fairly straightforward, quite simple in terms of its content. So now I'm going to show you a character-based piece, which is much more complex, much more involved. So this being a full marketing trailer. I think this is just under 3 minutes in length.
Beauty and harmony, governed by one eternal law. All that begins must end.
Just going to finish with a more stylized piece of animation. Obviously what we've seen so far has been more hyperreal, photoreal type of work. So this is a piece which combines both live action CGI in terms of CGI environments. All the actors you see in this piece were filmed against green screen, so their entire ever-changing environments are CGI. But you'll notice this piece then cuts to what looks like in-game footage of stylized Microsoft Kinect characters. Well, that very stylized work is also our own because the video game wasn't ready to be kind of captured and used. So it's quite a good example of how we're combining kind of 3 different areas: photoreal environment animation, the green screen live action element, and then the stylized animation as well. And the other nice thing about this piece is that it was our own creative as well. We had a bit of a heads up from Microsoft about the game, but the whole narrative and content of this piece came from our creative team as well.
You ready to go? Let's start the show. You ready to go? Let's take somebody, anybody, everybody move your body to the beat, don't stop. This is hip hop, can't stop, won't stop. Raise your hands up to the top. Now we all about we see quality.
Now, Tony alluded there to, to the whole kind of issue about photorealism and hyperrealism. One of the kind of challenges I think that a lot of courses have is not merely in terms of the kind of resource and expertise that might, help to teach and deliver that, but the fact that they're predicated a lot on other kinds of approaches which seem unrelated to that kind of model of realism, for example. So there's some kind of interesting issues there again about, what should your creative practice be to demonstrate certain kinds of skill set? And we'll come back to that in a moment. Okay. Caroline, do you want to kind of introduce from there? Or
well, I can probably stay here, actually.
You could probably stay there, that'd be great.
Yeah. Okay. Right, okay. I'm going to present a fairly different perspective to my colleagues on the panel because the programme that I run is, well, I think mainly it's different because it's really embedded in a film school. It comes from the Newport Film School and it's really taken on board a film school mentality. So the students can actually do anything they want to within animation techniques. So they can choose between doing stop motion or digital cell or CG. They're not forced down a CG route, which gives quite an interesting variety of approaches and practices. But most importantly, a film school mentality is really kind of embedded in their mentality, and beyond that then it's really about storytelling, and that's really what we're trying to teach them. So we're taking a really different approach to the approach that a lot of other schools are taking, which is much more about technical skills acquisition. And really about asking the students to really move us and make film statements which have some ability to create an emotional impact with the audience. So it's completely different, really. We're not looking for skills acquisition at all. But that's not to say that our students, when they graduate, don't go into the industry. And there is range of alternatives that students can go into and graduates can go into beyond visual effects through things like motion graphics and games. So there's a whole variety of approaches that they destinations that they have when they graduate. So what we really want them to do is to observe the world around them and to somehow communicate that and bring that into their film work. So it's really about starting to understand the human condition and to absorb that and to notice, to notice personal behaviour and non-verbal communication, and then embed that in a kind of character performance. So you'll see in the films, and the two films that I've chosen, it's quite a high-risk strategy because they are very 2D, but I've chosen them really because of their character performance, and what I think is something that demonstrates a skill in terms of communicating something with an audience, some kind of emotional resonance in the films. So they're quite recent films, actually. They're from 2010 and 2011. And the students, the graduates, since they've left, have had, they've been doing a variety of freelancing and, freelancing jobs. And, but also the films in their own right have had a variety of successes. So one of them's been, was shortlisted for the British Animation Awards and is on the British Animation Awards DVD. And the other one has won Best New Director for the Cartoon Saloon at the Cork Festival. So the films in themselves have done their own right, have done quite well in their own right on the festival circuit. And the students have been doing freelancing work beyond that. Okay, so I suppose really what the difference between what we're doing and perhaps my other colleagues here is they're perhaps more of a sort of, it's more kind of seductive and in a kind of sexy kind of a way. We want to put more kind of love and romance into the film student experience. So it's really about what you do with the animation that counts. And I would really like to think that our students graduate feeling like they're filmmakers who work with animation rather than just animators, per se. So it's really about the soul and the passion and the emotional connection that they can create using animation as a medium. And that, I think, is something which is perhaps dying out, and that's perhaps something that we can talk about further. It is really seductive to go down a technical route, but I think there is another approach which comes through perhaps taking a step back from a production, technical production approach, and thinking about it in more of a human communication kind of a way. So what can you put into your film that speaks to somebody or moves them or, creates some kind of a feeling? And I would really argue that that's got nothing to do with technology and technical skills at all. And quite often it's really the opposite. And you'll see in the films that I've chosen, they're actually very gentle films. Quite often there's not much going on in the frame at all. And that's partly why I think they're quite well designed, because you can have a character there that you can't, is just kind of standing there and not doing very much, but you feel a connection with it and you kind of want to hug it. The first film is a bear film. It's called Bear. It's about a bear, and you kind of want to connect with the bear. And partly that's because it does have a kind of resonance with something that's really typical to the human condition, something about trying to control his environment. So it's something which everyone can relate to. Like I said at the start, we've changed the name just recently to Animation Direction and Production, and it's the only animation course now in the country that does refer to the fact, I should say undergraduate animation course, that refers to the fact that it's got that it's producing directors, that it's creating students who can, if they want, aspire to be directorial. And for that reason, we've really kept the idea of the student film as a really important part and the sort of pinnacle of their student experience, while a lot of other courses are going towards showreels. I think the NFTS is an animation direction program as well. That's, it's a named award as animation direction, but we're the only undergraduate course. And I think it's really important, and I think it's great. And for some people, they just want to tell stories and they want to make things move in a really meaningful way, rather than just working at mathematically and scientifically at a computer for 3 years. And I think it's a really valuable opportunity to do that. I think it's also really important to say that a lot of my students, even though they might graduate, some of them do graduate with technical showreels and technical skills, don't get me wrong, but ones that don't, and there are quite a few, because quite a few of them opt to go for a digital cell route, for example, and concentrate on character performance. But that doesn't preclude them from going into the visual effects industry and from going into a more of a technical domain when they graduate. And it's actually quite common that people that graduate with really good animation skills, really good character performance skills, end up getting a job with VFX or games just off the back of their timing for animation skills and their character performance skills, and with not much technical skills, not a huge amount of software knowledge, but knowledge in animation itself. So the two things aren't really mutually exclusive, and I would really defend strongly the need to keep final films in the last year of the student experience. because it grows them, they can see something from beginning to end, see a project through, and it's something which is very meaningful to them quite often, and something which they can sort of negotiate and navigate in a way that you can't with a show reel. So I think it's a really important part of the student experience. Anyway, sorry, that was slightly garbled, but I hope you got the sense of what I'm trying to say. So would you like to roll the 2 films?
Thank you.
With me, it's my morals. If it weren't for these, I'd go nuts. A lot of these people that are religious, they've got to have something in their life, and it's a religion. That's what I think, anyway. Do you believe in anything?
Right. Okay. So you know, a different kind of show and different kind of demonstration of different kinds of skills, different kind of ethos, maybe, different kind of way of thinking about courses. One of the things, the composition of the panel also reflects the idea of when you are looking for a course, when you were looking for courses in many instances, what in essence you were looking for. Because one of the beauties of many of the British animation course deliveries is their variety, is their diversity, and the kind of ethos that they offer. Often the kind of deliverers of any one course set the kind of path of that course. They give it the sense of their perception, each kind of course leader's perception of what a set of students might need in 3 years' time at the end of their course. And that can differ from course to course and be a very different set of understandings about what a skill set actually might be. On the one hand, courses sometimes have gone for a very niche approach and said, let's provide you with that particular skill set and let's drive you towards that. Others have gone for a more generalist, almost creative industries set of skill sets that make people pertinent for a whole range of other roles, as well as specific kind of core skills. So we've got a range of kind of approaches, and it's very important, I think, that we've already discovered, that you have the strongest sense of what it is that you want to achieve, and ultimately where you are directing your energies and directing your futures. And we'll come to that, hopefully, obviously, in relation now to Sophie. Tell us about your work.
Yeah, so the work that I'm going to show is show reels that have been submitted to us in the last couple of years and people who are successful in getting roles with us. The way that we tend to recruit is that we do go around and to sort of graduate shows and watch short films, but it tends to be that we receive show reel applications, which is obviously a different format. It's more of sort of short, sharp excerpts of work rather than longer film. So what we look for and what this work shows is we work on photorealistic, CGI integrated live action films, and that's what we're really looking for when we look at show reels. And the show reels that I'm going to play are demonstrations of 2D, so compositing, 3D and animation. And they actually say at the front of the reel what's good about them, so I don't need to say anything else. So
Very good.
play.
Okay, let's go with that, please. Thank you. Tony, do you want to now put on the film of the student that you were talking about, and perhaps explain to us, in a certain sense, your thinking when you employed this person?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it demonstrates an awful lot. It's a great case study. Not actually a student, but it's a guy called Chris Scubeli from Romania, who is completely self-taught. So rather than being able to go a traditional route of doing a an animation degree and get his skills to a certain level. What he's done is beavered away in his bedroom, taught himself everything he knows, and then decided to embark on making a complete end-to-end 7-minute film. I won't show you all of it, I'll show you a section of it. And it took him 10 months to do it. So not necessarily that advisable. When you look at it in more detail, you do start to understand that many of the individual production processes within this are not taken as far as you would expect of a movie of this nature. I mean, he's particularly good at things like cinematography, but the level of finish and polish that he puts into certain things isn't of the standard you would necessarily expect from someone specialising in that area. But what it does do is just show really the wealth of ability of one guy being that dedicated to spend 10 months of his life just making this film, and for us that was, we were almost employing him purely for his attitude and ambition and drive to be able to take on such an incredible challenge all by himself.
The interesting part, though, is that in some ways it throws into relief some of the kind of things that we've already started hinting at by showing you different examples. In that, Tony's eyes are geared in watching that film for the idea of some of the kind of technical abilities, the way in which there's a certain kind of filmmaking practice.
Yeah, filmmaking skills as well.
And those kind of things, and the ways in which certain aesthetics being played for. Now, on the other hand, if you might watch that for content, you might say, that's just a rubbish shoot 'em up, isn't it? You know, that's just you know, a bit of a nick of you know, Starship Troopers or something, and it's a bit naff, you know. So it's often the way in which we obviously need to look, or the way that we want to look in some of these things. So let's try and address some of these things.
It's quite an interesting potential way forward, though, isn't it? And I think in many ways studios are missing a trick, because there is an awful lot of content and ideas in student shorts, graduate films, which could be taken, you know, to pilot stage and you know, have the IP developed. And we've done it once or twice with a few films which have been taken up by studios, and the characters have been developed, or, you know, there's sort of potential collaborations for taking them further into series or whatever. But it doesn't happen very often, and I think it could be one way of saving the student film. Almost treating it like a research and development for studios.
Let's just develop that bit. Chris and you know, perhaps you could talk a little bit to this. Is that, I mean, how far in a certain sense do you think there's a certain kind of pressure now, in obviously in the higher education environment, to almost be quasi-training? I mean, is that a problem? I mean, when students come to the door, do they, in essence, don't expect a fully rounded education? They expect, hey, I need these skills to get that job.
Yeah. In short, and I'm sure a lot of the people in the room would testify to that. You know, how many people go to university to enable them to get a job? Show of hands. Most of them. How many people go to university to study animation for the love of the art? A few. So, how many of you, keep your hands up, how many of you guys are prepared to live the rest of your lives without being paid a paycheck at the end of every month? Right. So, yeah, I mean, one or two. You're just going to be mad fools living on the street.
Mad Romanian fools.
So I think the reality is, Paul, I think to a large extent, a lot of people coming into college nowadays, and the parents certainly, they want a return on their investment. It costs a lot of money to go to college in the UK.
But I would certainly argue that technical skills training is not the only way to ensure that you get.
I never mentioned technical skills or training. Those words never passed my mouth, and I think that's the point.
That's the knee-jerk reaction, isn't it? You know, you think, well, how am I going to get a job?
Yeah.
What's the way to ensure of getting a job? I'm going to learn software.
Absolutely, but you know, there's ways of getting a job doing a course like the ones that you guys teach down in Newport. It's just about students being aware of what the opportunities are when they come out of a course like that, and what the opportunities are when they come out of a course like the ones that I work on. And I think that's the point here, that, you know, and I said it right at the beginning, you guys are the ones who need to be aware of where you want to be. and you need to make sure that you choose the right course to deliver the skills that you want in order to get to where you want to be.
Do you see though that the delivery though is getting skewed to the idea of the delivery of skills though, as opposed to the idea of the delivery of a context for people just to explore things and to engage with things?
I think in some examples, I think the better courses don't necessarily twist things in that particular direction. There are a lot of courses in the UK that are purely about bringing kids into a university to pay their bills at the end of every month and keep the university going. But I think there are, again, you've got to pick your course wisely, and pick a course that is going to provide you with a good education, opportunities to do further study like getting a PhD, and opportunities to get a job if that's what you want to do. But again, it's about choice, and it's about finding the right path for yourself.
Yeah. Well, let's go to Tony and Sophie on this, in the sense that, for example, I mean, it used to be the long-held cliche that academic life and industry, that working life and academic life were far apart. Certainly when I worked more in media production, there was this strong sense that the industry would be looking at academic life and saying, look, you're way off. You're not delivering anything that's industry standard, industry level, industry process. Now the CG moment and animation, it seems to me to be a little more correspondent to the nature of how industry function. I mean, is that your finding that university deliveries are pertinent to your needs?
I think that we still struggle to find students with the skills that we're looking for. Yeah. I think we do find them, and there is a lot of talent out there, but I think we do struggle to find that they cater totally to what we're looking for. But as Chris said, it very much depends what the students are going in to do the course for, if it's to study animation from a creative aspect, or whether it's to come out with the skills that Double Negative or another studio is looking for.
Equally, it strikes me as well, I mean, we've talked about this, of course, when we did Animex sort of panels, that it's also partly what you as an employer might want in a moment as well, Absolutely. Isn't it? We need technical directors, we need riggers, we need this now, and that often dictates a kind of market focus in a certain way.
Yeah, I think a couple of fairly important things to say is that I feel, first of all, that movie I showed of the Romanian guy, Chris Scoobly, really comes with an enormous health warning. I mean, I wouldn't ever suggest that a graduate took on something that ambitious, because within a university timescale and everything else you've got to do, you will fail. You will end up with something that you go to show it, and it's not one thing or the other. It's not hit any quality benchmarks, and you're not going to get a job anyway, so it would have been a dreadful waste of time. The other thing I wanted to say is that I think it's so important, and this is the really difficult thing, when you're growing up and you're going through university and you kind of figured out what it is you want to do. The most important thing I think you can do is, as soon as you can, is figure out what your specialist niche or your ultimate passion and area of interest and expertise is going to be, and try and align that with the course that you choose to do, because everything that you're doing at Newport, by the sounds of things, is very much the skill set that we would want from our directors and our up-and-coming art director. That kind of, the vision, the ideas, the creativity, they are all the skills that we would want from those really senior people that are actually going to lead that whole production. Now, technically, they don't have to be able to deliver the hands-on CG technical expertise. What I would say is probably the roles in my career so far, in the kind of circles that we move in at least, the roles that require that skill set are potentially going to be a smaller sector of the market, but they're going to be more senior, they're going to be more highly paid, and potentially they're going to be creatively more exciting. But there are then all of those individuals, and the majority of the people that we're recruiting, I'd imagine it's the same for yourself, so the Double Negative, is that you need people who have chosen one or two parts of the production process and gone, this is what I'm really passionate about, first of all, this is what I'm really excited about, really enthusiastic about, and I can see the signs in my work that I'm going to potentially be world class at this, and have a selection of work in your reel that demonstrates that's what you can do.
But again,
for me, there's an anxiety there about, in a certain sense, the niching of things, though. I mean, one of the great splendours I always thought about the nature of doing a degree, undertaking one, teaching one, letting people experience one.